Welcome back. OTB OT. It is Tuesday at 9:30, which means at this time we talk to my main man, Nick Underhill. I call him Nick Underchill because he's so much fun to talk to. Nick_Underhill. Find him at NewOrleans.football. Sign up for NewOrleans.football. Not only do you support Nick directly, there's no BS ads or anything, and you get the best Saints coverage out there. Nick, what's up, dude? What's going on?
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're doing well. Okay, so I know y'all talked. I'm sure the draft last week, and while I still have so much I want to talk to you about that, I guess with another week in the book, and kind of digesting these picks, breaking down film, looking at what you actually got. Where do you stand on this Tuesday when you look back at that Saints haul?
Well, Hester probably heard some of this because he's a fullback and he grinds. I don't know about you offensive linemen, but
yes, sir.
But yeah, look, I think going through it for another week, I think I'm a little bit higher on Pete Werner than I was maybe a week ago. The more I watch him, it's not an exciting pick, in the sense that it's like Quan Alexander flying all over the field, making all kinds of plays. But you watch him and, just seeing a guy in the B gap 10, 15 times in a row and not making a mistake and seeing the run the right way, you aren't going to get super excited about that. But at some point, you're going to look up and be like, when is he ever out of position? And it's hard to find those moments with him. And, I think his coverage is really good. I think he's just going to show up and be able to play right away. The whole class is just kind of like that, though. It's kind of like a little bit of a workman-like class. Like Peyton Turner isn't, a super bendy guy, but, he gets the job done. And we'll see how that transitions against NFL competition. Dominating against Tulane's backup tackle isn't quite the same as, going against a Ryan Ramczyk type player. But, I think he does have a chance to be pretty good. I think my take on Paulson Adebo is still kind of the same. I think there's still some stuff that I'm a little bit concerned about, I guess I would say, just in the sense that he might be leaned upon to be a starter very early on. And, I think there's some questions to answer about that. But, overall, I think they got some players that can play. There's no one that kind of makes you stand up and jump when you watch their tape. But I think they got a lot of guys that could be, solid players.
Yeah, and obviously the Peyton Turner pick is interesting for a multitude of reasons. You talked a lot about relative athletic score before the draft. He was obviously above 9 in that regard. Has some ability. Just as much as a pass rusher, though, he seems to be like a run-stopping end, and the Saints love that, right? Just look at Cam Jordan, look at Marcus Davenport. You're talking about every down ends. But what does that room look like now? Like, what does that pick signify for Davenport and Jordan? And maybe not even just like, what does it signify this year? And then what does it signify in the more long-term view as well?
Well, I mean, you just made a good point, though, about them kind of having run-stopping ends, so to speak. With Trey Hendrickson, they made him gain like 20 pounds and kind of change his game a little bit. And you saw things open up for him last year where he became more of a power rusher, more of a bull rush guy that could, push back and squeeze the pocket. And that's kind of the way they go about it, So he fits the mold of what they're doing. As far as how that room's going to look, that's a really good question. I think that ideally it would be Cam Jordan and Marcus Davenport at the top. That would mean that, Cam kind of rebounded after a somewhat down season in terms of sacks. His pressures were still good, but those pressures didn't turn into sacks. So, I think that's something to kind of keep an eye on, too, just to see his progression going forward. Was it just a weird year circumstance that things just swing towards Trey Hendrickson and Trey Hendrickson had the luck and Cam didn't? Or is it an older player that is, there's a little bit of deterioration? I think that's what we got to find out. And Davenport just needs to be better across the board. I think, patience has long since expired on his potential, and that needs to turn into something. But, I would guess those two guys at the top, Peyton Turner, kind of in that Trey Hendrickson role, and then, Carl Granderson in very specific pass rushing situations. He's kind of the opposite of the other three guys in the way that he rushes, and, he's a very, bend the edge type player. And, I just think in today's league with mobile quarterbacks, you got to pick your spots with those guys because you can get way upfield and now all of a sudden there's a spot for, Patrick Mahomes to just take off and get you for 15 yards on the ground. And you got to be, careful about that.
So what, and I think I've been giving Marcus Davenport too much kind of benefit of the doubt because 2 years ago he had a really solid year that looked like, okay, this is the pre-leap year. But looking at some of the numbers, he seemed to really take a pretty significant step back in almost every statistical category. Obviously, injuries play a role in that, but what do you think? Do you have any great explanation for why he didn't continue that forward trajectory that it looked like he had been on pace for?
Yeah, I mean, look, I might be a little bit jaded by him because I've been the guy every year that's look at the pressures and the percentages and all that stuff, and this is going to be the year, and it's just never the year. And the pressure numbers are still there, but you look at it and there's no hits and there's no sacks, and if those pressures aren't turning into hits, you got to get hits to have those turn into sacks, and they're just not there for him consistently. And how valuable is that pressure? The thing with him is just, I think the consistency is just the biggest issue, because when he came back last year from injury, you saw a difference in 2 or 3 games, and it was significant.
Yeah,
it was very obvious how he was impacting those games, and then it was just where is he? And he kind of disappeared a little bit. So, I think that's the biggest thing for him, and I don't know how that happens. He has everything there to be a very good pass rusher. I think his pass rush repertoire has gotten better. He's big, long, fast. There's no reason that these pressures shouldn't be turning into more production. But even just look at his bull rush. He bull rushes somebody and he kills them. And Trey Hendrickson's bull rush was half as good, but it was way more productive because it was just consistent. It showed up every week, and that's just the missing link with Davenport right now. And look, I think the Peyton Turner pick in some respects is kind of putting him on notice. You're in the last year of your deal, got another first round pick here. What's it going to be? And I think this is kind of we say it all the time, but this is truly the do or die season for him. And I think his career is kind of at a little bit of a crossroads. And if he taps into that potential, he's got that huge deal. He's going to get paid more than Trey Hendrickson did because he's a better player athletically, but the production has to get there for him to get that money.
All right, since the draft's over and mostly free agency is over as far as guys that can probably be impact players for the Saints, what do you think still the biggest need for this team is, maybe the biggest weakness, Nick?
I think it's still the same one that we've been talking about for 4 months now, and it's just cornerback, and it's extremely uncomfortable, that situation. Like I said, there's things about Adebo that I think are good, but you look at the UCF game and there's a little bit of panic when the ball's in the air with him, and he's getting beaten on double moves, and I think that's got to get cleaned up. It wasn't consistent throughout all his games, but there's little things through there that I think are concerning, and you look at it and you say, well, if he's playing this in college, what's it going to look like in the NFL? I think it's possible that you could clean that stuff up, and you could probably hide some of his weaknesses, his over aggressiveness in zone. Some of the hitches, he would just way over pursue him, and a 5-yard gain turns into a 25-yard gain because he's just coming at it way too hot. So I think there's some little things with coaching that he can clean up, and it'll help him. But look, if he's got to be your day one starter, it's an uncomfortable situation. So if they still had an opportunity to add a veteran player, I would pursue that just to have a safety net. If Lattimore gets suspended and Patrick Robinson has his annual injury and that comes early, who are your cornerbacks? So they got to bring back Ken Crawley too. That would be the other move I make there, just to have just another floor of defense, so that you got a third or fourth guy at that position early in the year if Lattimore is on a suspension.
Talking to Nick Underhill at Nick_Underhill. Nick, yesterday we had a lot of conversation kind of talking about the NFC South post-draft, some of the moves that had been made. And when it comes to kind of projecting the South, outside of Tampa Bay, obviously being a Super Bowl winner that brings everybody back, that is what it is. But the bottom three, man, there's arguments to be made for each team. How do you kind of view those three shaking out right now with the Panthers, Saints, and the Falcons?
It's a good question. It's tough. I think Atlanta's going to be really, really good offensively. Right? Man, they got so many weapons, and now you add Pitts to that. I'm not really sure how anyone's going to defend against them. I think Carolina, I'd probably have them at the bottom. I think there's just too much for them to answer at this point. I still have a lot of questions about their coaching. No offense to the LSU people, but I think there's still things for Roll and Brady to prove, and I think they're both going to be good coaches. But I kind of need to see a little bit of it and a little bit more consistency, and and just kind of see how that whole program grows. So I'd have them at the bottom right now. I go Atlanta third, Saints second, and Tampa at the top. Just you got to put the Super Bowl champs still at the top. But look, if things work out with Jameis, they could be right there at the end, competing for the top of the division. And I think that's true for a lot of these teams. Though, if things work out for them, it wouldn't be outrageous for Atlanta to catch fire and be a really good team. I think the odds are a little bit longer for Carolina, just because look, I mean, even their quarterback, it's just. They got big questions, and they don't have the roster around them like the Saints have. The Saints have similar questions at quarterback, but I don't think that the roster around Jameis is as shaky as Carolina. So I'd kind of slot them like that. But you're right, like those bottom three, even all four. If Brady suddenly gets old, like let's not forget that it took them a while to get going. The year before in New England, I don't think he was on fire at all that season. So if he looks old, all of a sudden, I think it could be very tight throughout the whole division. So it's a toss-up in a lot of ways.
It is weird when you look at the quarterbacks. You've got two established guys who have had long NFL careers, and you look at Jameis, who's had success, but obviously there's been some ups and downs. And Sam Darnold is this guy who's got all this potential, but we didn't see it with the Jets. And is it because of Adam Gase and the Jet situation just being a hot mess? What can Sam Darnold bring to the Panthers? And so the quarterback hierarchy here is a little different than the fact that you've kind of got these older guys and then you got these other guys who had the talent, but we're waiting on them to show their full talent at the NFL level.
Yeah, no, definitely 100%. And Sam Darnold could be really good. And as we've mentioned a million times, Gase he's kind of been a killer for some of these players that he's coached. It's really weird how, players get away from him and they flourish. And, I can see it happen for Sam Darnold. There's things that I like, but there's other things too. When you watch him, sometimes you can watch a player and it's very obvious, like, oh, this is a good player in a bad situation.
Right.
I don't know if that was always the case with him, though. I mean, some of the throws he made were a little bit mind-boggling. But look, maybe your confidence gets rattled and you start pressing, and all these crazy things start to happen. And if he gets in a better, more stable situation, maybe that alleviates itself. But I don't know who I have more questions about at this point. I mean, I think it's probably definitely him, and then there's still a lot for Jameis to do. And, them looking at other quarterbacks, I don't really know how to read that situation. Does that speak to something about Jameis, or is it just trying to cover all your bases and just see all these different options and see how it shakes out? But, the Saints aren't operating as a team that's set at that position by any means. So it seems to me that even internally there's questions for him to answer. So, look, if he comes out and he does it, I mean, we all know he has the ability to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league. It's just everything has to come together for him, and it hasn't yet. And, I think he still has a chance, and I think his upside is much higher than Darnold's, and I think it's easier for him to get to his point. So, out of those two, I would rather have Jameis on my team. And then, obviously, like you said, the other guys have been around for a while. Matt Ryan has all the pieces in the world to succeed. If he doesn't get back to how it was, during the Kyle Shanahan years, I don't think it's ever going to get there for him because he couldn't be in a better situation.
Yeah, I completely agree. Also, I'm cracking up because Danny tried to, Danny plays like highlights during the video, and the Sam Darnold highlights were the most unimpressive cut up that I've ever seen in my entire life. It was like a 10-yard swing pass. Huge thank you to Nick Underhill, Nick_Underhill, NewOrleans.football. Nobody knows the team better. Go sign up right now. Nick, thank you so much, man.
Yes, thanks for having me. Take it easy, guys.
All right, take it easy, Brian. Ask the Bench, brought to you by Cold Delicious Coors Light. Coming up next, you're no TV.